Good evening, everyone. It is such a pleasure to see you all and to welcome you to the third webinar of our monthly series. Tonight, we have the great pleasure of having two of our very esteemed associates. I'll start from my bottom and work up. Donna-Lea Bowman and Marielle Métrailler. I say esteemed. They are esteemed, and they're also among the earlier associates of the Institute. So they've been through the very beginnings and the throes of it. What I've noticed about them, and you will notice tonight during their presentation, is that they are very accomplished presenters. They have done their homework to learn not everything you can learn about a theme as complex as self-awareness, but to go deeply into the subject matter, to see how it impacts other people and how they can communicate it in a manner that is meaningful and impactful for them. This is the presentation I have seen in the past, at least bits of it, and has really moved me immensely. And I am so thrilled that it is now one of our webinars that you can all enjoy as we move forward. My name is James Bonar, and I'm the principal and founder of the Bonar Institute. I will now be passing the virtual podium to our two presenters, but before doing so, if anyone were to have a question, there will be a Q&A. And if you're too shy, don't worry. I prepared a few questions of my own, which I'm really looking forward to asking. So thank you for being with us. Enjoy this presentation, as I know you will. Now over to the presenters, and to Marielle and to Donna-Lea. Both of you.
Okay.
Go ahead, Marielle.
Okay, sure. My name is Marielle Métrailler. I'm a leadership and executive coach. I'm originally from Switzerland. I'm a Francophone. That's where my accent comes from. I have a bachelor's in marketing and sociology, and I have worked in the corporate world, in Europe, in North America, and I'm interested in lots of themes, lots of different industries, whether luxury goods, biotech, pharmaceutical organizations. So I love learning. This is one of the big topics for me. I love to learn, and this is where self-awareness comes in as well. And coaching has become my world, and self-awareness is the first key. So looking forward to talking about that topic a little more. Over to you, Donna-Lea.
Thank you, Marielle. My name is Donna-Lea Bowman. I have been working for over 25 years. My background is in helping businesses grow, so strategic initiatives, client relationship management, partnership development. But as Marielle has said, self-awareness has really been a part of that. I help businesses grow. Part of what I do is the softer skills, is to help businesses understand about the softer skills and how they need to use them when they are building relationships with clients or when they're building their business. They just can't go in and say, I have this wonderful gadget and here's why you should buy it. It's all about building relationships, establishing trust, and understanding truly what the client wants. And that's where I come in. I've worked with a diverse group of businesses. I'm working with a startup, high-tech companies. I've worked with universities on growth of their programs and recruiting. I've worked with franchises. I've worked with, radio pharmaceutical transportation company, online learning companies. There's been so many different businesses that I've worked with, and it's just been a fascinating career. I wanted to talk first about self-awareness. The definition here, self-awareness is mindful consciousness of your strength, your weaknesses, actions, and presence. And it requires having a clear perspective of your mental and emotional stress. The goal is that with objective clarity, you can make better choices and become a more purposeful leader. And when your mind is clear, it's easier to make good decisions. Strong, authentic leaders understand this, that self-awareness in a conscious leader means we tell ourselves the truth instead of making assumptions and allowing our ego to take hold. So this is where we change from automatic pilot reactions, where we're not really thinking about what we're doing, knee-jerk reactions, or what I like to say are assumptions, to really being conscious and aware and purposeful in what you're doing. And self-awareness really is the first step here. You know, our old habits served a purpose for us, and they served it well. But if you are unaware, you can't make more useful decisions or have a more objective viewpoint, and you can't make concrete and constructive decisions that are objective. You know, when you're in a meeting and someone says something that just seems like way off base, and somebody has that knee-jerk reaction, and, you know, when we're like that, we feel like, you know, we like to be right, and we may feel that we feel, you know, justified in the reaction. However, if you stop and think about why this person that you've worked with so long suddenly has, you know, said something that's completely out of the box and completely, you just don't understand. You have to come at this not from that knee-jerk, you know, back up sort of thing saying, no, you're wrong, but from an open and curious mind and committed to understanding why before there's any reaction at all. You know, we never know what staff, you know, our coworkers have going on in their lives. So we may make an assumption based on something they said, but it really has nothing to do with that. Maybe that there are issues in the background that nobody has communicated, right? A part of self-awareness is also being able to communicate and have other people feel that they can communicate with you. So trust and empathy in an office environment and at home go a long way to make our environments and staff feel more at ease and more confident in bringing up challenges, right? As leaders, like I said, we don't always know what the underlying pressures are. So when staff feel safe and know that they are valued, and you allow them to feel, you know, you allow them to feel that, then they're going to feel empowered. Using transparency, honesty, and integrity, encouraging collaboration and open communications to make effective decisions. Let them do their jobs. When we're more aware, we feel more control. We take action instead of reacting. Reacting doesn't serve any purpose, but taking purposeful and thoughtful action based on facts that you stop to consider. This is understanding the bigger picture, and this is what we call purposeful leadership. It enables you to self-assess everyone's strengths and weaknesses. You need that in an environment. The old saying is hire people that are smarter than you, then stand back and allow them to do their jobs. My favorite is from Jim Collins from Good to Great. The book says, get the right people on the bus first, and then figure out where they fit best. Your perception of a situation may not be accurate. So before we make assumptions, you need to think about it. And also the reaction that you give also affects how others perceive you. So we tend to focus on an issue as opposed to what else may be going on around the office, what else might be going on in their lives for this to happen, you know, that affects their work or at home. You know, so for example, easy example is a teenager who's, you know, been uncooperative and combative for about a week or so, and you really don't know why. We make assumptions as parents, oh, it's probably because I didn't let them go to that party last week. But when in fact, there could be something that's going on at school. They may not feel well. There may be some pressure, that some bullying. There may be 100 different things that are going on. So it's really important to ensure that before you make a judgment or make decisions based on misinformation, you stop and think and have discussions as to what is going on. The other thing is sometimes we have reactions based on feelings we're not as good as, or we don't have the same skill sets as others around us, or we can't do that job because we don't know how to do it, or whatever else it is, right? We all have insecurities. And I think one of the other things is to really sit down and think about the skill sets that you do have. Where are your strengths? What is it that you're really good at? And, you know, to ask other people as well, ask friends of yours, you know, ask coworkers, what is it that you think I'm good at? I'm you know, feeling a little insecure, and I just, maybe if I could see how you perceive me, then that might help. And it's, you know, very important to understand that usually others' opinions of us are higher than what we believe in ourselves. So becoming more self-aware of your talents and skills can help you with your confidence. Moderna, the CEO of Moderna, is a very young woman. She was employee number 1 in 2020. And she says, surround yourself with people who will keep you aware. Thank you, Marielle.
So what can we be aware of? As Donna-Lea said, and I'm hoping that you are completely convinced, self-awareness is key for change. But we tend to all stay at one level, or the way we think about a problem is usually through habits. So we tend to go through the same way of thinking for each problem. And sometimes we don't see a solution that's very simple just because we go through the same thing. So what can you be aware of? What should you be aware of? And most of us stay in your head, in our heads. So how can you get into other channels? So think about your attention here, and you're going to put like a spotlight on different areas. So think about a problem you have, or something where you're like, I seem to be getting the same result all the time. You know, Einstein's definition of insanity. We tend to do that too. So what can we put this spotlight on? So the first one here, there we go. External perceptions. External perceptions, it's easier to understand. It's the first one. It's really our external sensations like touch, taste, smell, sight. So when you tell someone, can you imagine something? Usually people will describe what they see. Most of us are visual people. But even that, are you aware? Are you a visual person? Are you an auditive person? Are you more kinesthetic? Is it more going through your senses, your vision? Where do you stand? Sometimes when I ask someone to imagine something, they will describe it beautifully in the future. And when I ask them, now what do you hear? It's like, oh, nothing. The voices are gone. So just that awareness that there are other perceptions than just your vision. It's interesting, and sometimes will help you resolve a problem, just going through different senses. So that's the external one. Internal sensations. So we tend to ignore them. We know we have them, but we ignore them. So it's usually really about physiological condition, your body, your nervous system. So do you have any pain anywhere? Is it throbbing? Your temperature? Are your hands cold? I know when I get nervous, my hands are cold, my face gets warm. So noticing these things. Oh, every time my face is warm, it's probably something going on that makes me nervous. What is it? So muscular sensations, heartbeat, your breath, your urges. So breath is an interesting one. You can choose to slow down, start breathing. But you don't always know, where do I stand? How am I breathing just right now? And how can I stop and take some time to breathe? Most of us don't have the time for that, or we think we don't have the time. Next one, language and cognition. Language, this one is, we're not going to spend too much time on that one because that's the one everybody wants to focus on all the time. What are the thoughts? What is the chatter in your head? What are these little voices telling you? But also language. What kind of language are you using? What kind of words? And if you think about words, you can think about cognitive distortions, like the use of always, never. That could be a signal that maybe you tend to view your world in black or white. What's the gray here? Always a good question. So just by noticing the type of language that you're using, I know a lot of women use a lot of words like just, or I thought, or sorry, all of these. Being conscious of how you're using these words is very important. A very, very powerful word, the power of yet. If you can just add yet, That's an amazing difference. I can't do this yet. Changes everything. So language and cognition is very powerful. It's how you view your world, but through observing your language, that can be revealed. But again, I don't want to spend too much time on that one. That's the one usually most people know about. So my next one, emotions. Whole world we can give. I don't know how many workshops about that one. Emotions, emotional intelligence. You can of course take an assessment. We can go deep into emotional awareness, self-awareness on the emotional front. Interesting, most emotions come from our thinking. So how do they relate to one another? Always interesting to go and look into that. But think about that problem you were thinking about at the beginning. If you go through each of these channels, what is it saying to you? How does it change your awareness of the situation, and what new solutions come to mind? The last one here is relational awareness. And this one is maybe a little more difficult to understand. So we will have an example, which is called the drama triangle, and I'm going to get into that in a moment. When you go through each of these channels in detail, really what gets revealed is your unconscious psychobiology. Suddenly you understand what's happening. Underneath is what we call presence and stillness. That is that place within you where you have peace, where it's calm. And really where that gets you is to objective clarity. Now, the problem you're looking at without all the lenses that you were looking through, but you have the real problem. And that usually helps you solve it. But I did promise there is a present in any presentation, there needs to be a cap. So I'll give you some caps. The drama triangle. So that's my example for the relational awareness. So what's happening in that one? So as promised, you need a little cat. Where is my little kitty? First little kitty. So we talked about awareness, and because we're talking about leadership and we're talking about conscious leadership, purposeful leadership, what we're talking about here is to take full responsibility, the right amount of responsibility. So becoming conscious of what is actually yours and what isn't. It sounds simple, it's very difficult. So the drama triangle here it illustrates basically what can go when everything goes wrong. And we have all been playing, and you'll recognize yourself in some of these roles at some point. So as soon as you realize that you're playing one of these roles as a conscious leader or a purposeful one, you can start looking at, oh, hang on a minute. I think I'm playing this role here, and you can get back into the right amount of responsibility. So my victim here. Poor me, I give up. It's not my fault. Everybody is against me. The world is against me. So think about gravity. If a pen fell and you said, it's not my fault, it's gravity. That's my victim. Because you focus on what you cannot control. It feels disempowering. It feels depressing. You can't do anything, and you're a victim. They're usually not alone, our little victims, so they get some help. And here we have our little villain. The villain is in any situation when it gets a little rough, when tensions grow, when there is stress, what do? They're not going to try and solve the problem. My victim is going to cry. My villain is going to try whose fault it is. It's you. And sometimes we might be a little confused with the victim because some of them might point the finger at themselves. Like, it's all my fault. So again, taking too much or too little of their responsibility. And You're gonna like the last one. Everybody likes it, my hero. So everybody thinks, oh, I want to be a hero. No, you don't. You don't. Heroes, you know that person. They help everybody else. They love to help. Us coaches, sometimes, we love to help. The problem is when we help a victim, we're not helpful. What we're doing is telling the victim, you're not okay and you can't do it yourself. So, but I'm kind, so I'm going to help you. It's not a good role. You encourage the victim. You don't delegate. You do everything yourself. This person will burn out and is not actually helping anyone. It's a very, very toxic triangle. Anybody who has seen this at work or elsewhere will know that doesn't work. The hero, I would say, for a lot of people actually get promoted with this behavior because it's like, oh, this person knows what it takes to get there. But they're going to be exhausted and burned out. And creating a situation in which they're irreplaceable, which is not great. A lot of women who play heroes end up with 2 jobs. And I see this all the time. Like, oh, I got promoted, but I still have to do the other job because nobody can do it. Really? So they need to learn how to delegate. But I don't want to go further into that. I think Donna-Lea is going to tell you how you can go from this toxic triangle to something a little more useful.
Hello. Okay. I really like this. I really like this slide. So the question is, how do we move from one role to being more helpful? You know, there are 2 sides to every coin. If you're a victim, how could this be transformed? How could you transform this into something positive? When you become present and remove the drama, you become empowered and you choose how to respond. You become a player. And how do you do that? By taking full responsibility. So as Marielle said, become response-able is both fundamental and extreme because you're committing to take full responsibility and to support others who also need to take full responsibility. When we blame, we move the cause and control of our lives outside of ourselves. So victims and villains always say, it's someone else, it's not me, right? When you start seeing the problem as it is and you take away all of the big emotions, you are in control. You can look at a problem objectively from a curiosity point of view, from blame to, I wonder what the opportunities are here. I'll give you an example. My husband is a really calm guy, and I work with a diverse portfolio of businesses. And sometimes, you know, I'll discuss some of the challenges with him and say, I'm worried about doing this. You know, I really don't know how to do this. And I can, you know, I can feel my body going back even as I say this. You know, we start moving away from it. And he says, instead of, I can't do this, or I don't know how, you know, think about it as, let's be curious. And that's exactly what happened. I sat at the table and I went, how can I do this? What are the possibilities and the opportunities here? So instead of the negative side of it, you're leaning into possibilities. This takes off some of the pressure. It shifts your attention to possibilities. It physically changes your body. The stress level can come down. And so we'll move now to victim. When they become a player, you know, players in the arena, you're in the ballpark and you're playing. You're become responsible, but again, you're also empowered. So focus on what you can do. What is it that's in your control versus out of your control? Stop worrying about what's out of your control and look at what is control, what is in your control, and what you can do about it. How you look at the problem. How do I look at this problem? How do I find solutions? Where do I start? That curiosity can come in there. And take adult responsibility. Decide what you really want and then take action on it. And if someone helps you, keep your agreements. If someone helps, do your part by following through. And ask yourself, how can I really get what I want in a healthy way? And perhaps that's in helping others so that you all meet the goal together. as a team. And the other thing, as I've mentioned before, count your blessings, really acknowledge your strengths and what is going well. If we focus on the negative, then we're right back to the 3 little icons. Remember, you make you, so minimize the self-pity, bring up more of that self-control and the ability to say, I'm going to do this, and step into it. When we talk about the villain becoming the challenger, I like this. Some of the people that I work with, have a tendency sometimes to say, oh, I don't think so. I don't think I can do that. I don't want to do that, whatever. But if you learn how to challenge them in a positive way, use your strengths to ask questions. Make sure it's a clear structure. How can I help you? But state your boundaries. I'm willing to listen to your story for 10 minutes, and then it's up to you to decide. Or active listenings. I can really listen without making it mine to solve. So if you need an ear, I'm here and I can listen to what you're saying, but it will be up to you to resolve. And make expectations clear. I've had your agreement on getting this completed by Tuesday. If you cannot complete it, as soon as you realize that, let me know. And provide choices. So it's proverbial child, in bedtime. Instead of saying you're going to have your bath now, perhaps give them a choice. Do you want your bath before supper or you want it after supper? Give them a choice. It's easier to have an agreement if they have some control. And in the workplace, you can either keep your agreement or I'll no longer be involved. You choose. The next one is hero becomes a coach, and use powerful questions to teach instead of doing something for someone else. Express your support, give them the message, I care about you, and I know that you are capable. Do not do anything that the victim can do for themselves. Just keep saying, I know you can do this. When they start trying to hand it off, nope, I know you can do this, right? You can ask if they want help, but you're going to limit what that help is. So be clear that they are still responsible. The other thing is, like we talked about beforehand, I'm willing to listen, still not going to be mine. And you provide choices, state your boundaries and provide choices. You can come into my office for 15 minutes, we'll go through it, and then you can decide what you're going to do and go off and complete it, please. Marielle, back to you.
I think we are at questions. Did anybody want to share if they've learned anything, if they have any questions or?
So for our welcome guests, if you do have questions, you can either come off mute and ask them orally, or you can write them down in the chat, and I will endeavor to be attentive and read them to both Marielle and Donna-Lea. While we wait for some of you to, if I may, to muster the courage to ask a question or to formulate a question, I would just like to thank both Marielle and Donna-Lea for what I thought was a brilliant presentation. I thoroughly enjoyed it. I was really captivated by what you said, how you said it. For me, it was all at once eloquent, compelling, and impactful. And when you have those 3 attributes, one on top of the other, it really does create an effect upon the audience. And I know for one, me, it created quite an impact for me. And I wanted to thank you both for that. You are really very gifted at what you do. And the more people can listen to you and learn from you, the better off they will all be, and we will all be. I do have a question, though. You were talking about self-awareness, and I'm curious about how, if you don't mind, I'll just choose one of you and you can bounce it back and forth. But perhaps, Marielle, in your coaching practice, do you ever have people who will, when you start, or if you start to speak about self-awareness, look at you or hope that you're not looking at them and will roll their eyes, and that they don't seem to connect or to care about this or not. What is your experience with people, with some of your clients, when you start speaking about self-awareness?
Definitely the rolling the eyes. Not everybody, but interesting. It reminds me of my own daughter as well. That come with these like rolling her eyes. A lot of people will say, well, I am self-aware. What do you mean?
Mm-hmm.
It seems to be so obvious, and and again, as I said at the beginning, a lot of people spend a lot of time in their heads, so there is some resistance sometimes about becoming aware of more than just your head, especially because I work with a lot of people in science and tech, so they tend to ignore anything else than logic and what is rational and makes sense to them. So a lot of skepticism, I think, and a lot of people will think that it is a bit of a buzzword, self-awareness thing again. So yes, I do get people who really understand this and are very interested in learning more.
So for the ones who are more skeptical, or perhaps for me at least, they would be the more challenging group. How do you find you can draw them out of their skepticism? Or is that just a utopian dream?
I hope not.
Me too.
One of the things I explain is also that it's not just us coaches making this up. Especially because I work with scientific and tech people, especially for scientific and in the medical space. What I reiterate is that this is not coming from me. It has profound scientific basis. It's not invented, so we have proof. So I like to, especially when we talk emotions, they don't like that. But if you try to adapt your language to theirs and start talking about data points for emotions, for instance. So would you ignore information just because it doesn't make you feel that comfortable? Most of them would say no. And if you think about emotions as information, now what is it telling you? And it removes some of the stigma, I think.
And Donna-Lea, you were talking, you started off, I thought you were very eloquent in your presentation on self-awareness. Do you find that there are among the people you work with that they see a link between self-awareness and the emotions and the power of the emotions that Marielle was speaking about? Or not?
Yeah, definitely. I can give you a bit of an example.
Yeah,
with
please.
the gentleman that I worked with. And so I was at one of the universities this summer doing a personal leadership development course. So it was business plans and personal leadership plans. They were from the Middle East, and there were a group of 16 of them. And their first language is Arabic. And so we'll call the gentleman John. And he was one of these senior executives. And everyone around the table, when they came, the purpose was for them to learn about leadership and international ways of doing business, but also to develop their own personal skills, their personal leadership development skills. Every week when I would meet them, they would need to do a presentation on this personal development plan, leadership development plan that they were working on. And there was one gentleman in particular who was very, very quiet. And he usually sat towards the end of the boardroom table in the classroom.
Mhm.
And he would speak, and his reports were very eloquent. I'm sure Google Translate, helped them. It needed to help them, but also just, the thought process clearly at an executive level with a huge amount of responsibility. But when he went to speak, to tell me about his report and about the progress that he had made and what he came to see, it ended up that he would only speak a few words, and it was very quiet. So we were all leaning in like this, right? And I noticed it, and I sent him an email one evening after looking at his report. And I said to him about, your reports are really, really good, but when you go to share your ideas in front of, we had them separated because it was such a big group. So we had them separated into 5 or 6. I said, you're not really speaking, it's just a few words at a time. So he was extremely self-aware to say, I'm shy, and my fear is that I will make mistakes when I speak English. Now, keep in mind that everybody had a really broad degree of fluency.
Mhm.
And what would happen in the dynamic of the different groups was that if someone was having trouble in expressing in English what it was, then there would be other people, they would say, excuse me, madam, I'm going to find out what it is, and then I'll translate, right? So that's what would happen. They would talk to the person, they would say, he's asking this question, or he's trying to say this. Right? And then that person would use those words and say what it was. But what ended up happening with him is he said very little, and they would ask him, but he would give them the answer instead of coming back. Right? So basically, he wasn't speaking English. He wasn't enough English. So he wasn't learning. So he was self-aware enough to realize that that's what the issue was. So what I did was I spoke to him. I sat down and spoke with him privately, and I asked him about it. He said, I'm so worried about making a mistake that I don't want to speak. And I said, number one, I said, do you realize that everybody in that room is trying to help everybody when they speak English? And I said, do you realize that they actually lean in when you speak? Because they're interested, you speak very low, but they're also interested in what you have to say. And they're trying to make sure that whatever it is you want to say, that they're helping you translate it. I said, number one, so there's a huge respect there. Number two, I said, when you don't speak in the language that you're practicing, no matter how many times you practice someone in your head, you don't have the same learning because you have to verbalize something when it comes to languages. I said, that's number two. I said, number three, it's very isolating. You're sitting at the very end of a table. Everybody else is, close around. I said, do you feel like you're a little isolated? He said, yes. And so what I did, I said to him, you are very, your reports are wonderful. Clearly you understand the subject matter, and clearly you're doing really well because I see the improvement. I said, I'm going to challenge you, number one, to speak in the classroom. No matter how much you think you're making mistakes, if you take a look around, nobody's English in here is perfect, right? You guys have come in from a foreign country. This is, your second or maybe third language, and you are speaking it. So to me, that is courage. Mm-hmm. And I have admiration for you. Number two, I said, every day when you are on campus, I challenge you to talk to 2 people. Mm-hmm. Say hello. And he said, I don't know what to say. I said, if you ask people about themselves, I said, you are going to have a great conversation. Mm-hmm. And so that's what I did. And I said, I challenge you when I see you next week. This is my expectation. So he came back. What a change. It really was quite a change. And I said, you are in a very lonely space right now because your fear, and I understand it because at one point I was an extreme introvert as well. Mm-hmm. So I talked about introversion and extroversion, and I talked about as an introvert, you really need to take that step forward out of it. You need to have the courage so you're not as isolated, because his life was isolated as well. Mm-hmm. So I said, I challenge you. And when you go back, I challenge you to, be more active he was on a website for learning English, mm-hmm. to be more verbal and to be more active. And I've had some good feedback from him since then that he's making progress.
Thank you very much.
And probably he's
Go ahead.
talking about self-awareness, he was aware of certain things. But if you look at the map, he was aware maybe of some of his feelings, not all of them though. He was not aware of others, and he was aware of mainly language and cognitive, but probably not the others. Not aware of how he presents, not aware of how others are. So if you look at the whole map of awareness, there is much more to discover than when you stop at the first one.
Yeah.
Marielle, is there a person you've worked with that that has really blown you away by the kind of progress they've made in terms of self-awareness? You know, somebody who, I know it's hard to think of one, especially, you know, à pris de point as I'm doing, so I'm sorry for hitting you with that out of nowhere. But I was just listening to both of you and what you've been saying about the power of self-awareness and about, you know, and how you are very aware for you to notice even when they move in, and what that means from the point of view of the eloquence of their body language and what you've been able to detect from it. You're very aware, both of you, and you're very knowledgeable about about the topic, but also the power of it. And I was wondering if because stories are always so strong, you find, if there were one, and if not, that's fine, because I understand I'm coming at, you know, I'm dropping this out of nowhere on you, which isn't really fair. So I apologize for that.
I'm thinking about an example, but I want to raise with you that when we do assessments, what's so interesting is when we test self-awareness, sometimes it goes down.
Oh.
And I find this so interesting because it didn't go down. But most people, exactly as I said to you earlier, think that they're very self-aware. So when you ask them before you work with them if they're self-aware or questions around that, they will say, yes, I am. And then sometimes it goes down because suddenly it's a bit like knowledge. The more you know, the more that you don't know anything.
Absolutely.
So that I have seen repeatedly. Other than that, there are so many examples, but
that's a good one.
Yeah,
that's a good one. You mentioned at the beginning, and speaking about awareness and hearing, my hearing didn't capture everything you said at that time, or the import of everything you said, but what you just said is very true, and it's important to be able to pick up on it.
Yes, and what I mentioned at the beginning, that happens a lot. It's not just once. It's as if we were always opening the same drawer or reusing the same strength. So I sometimes say it with strength is we like them, we're comfortable. So it's a bit like a potluck, and you always bring the same dish.
Yeah, no, that's good.
So you can try another one.
So, you know, Marielle, when you were talking, or when you were talking about the drama triangle, and you talked about, I was quite taken with that. And then as a conversation, or as the presentation went on, you were also speaking about the hero and the role of the hero. For me, the hero, I immediately started to think of mythology and, you know, the knight. Absolutely. The knight, you know, and shining armor on a white stallion and so on. And then I had the memory of more along the lines of what you said about a very dear friend of mine who said, for God's sakes, James, I'm not looking for a knight and, you know, on a stallion. I'm just looking for a friend who will listen. And that struck me because I had absolutely misread everything. And what you were both describing really hit me because it brought all of that back. and how important what you are saying is when we truly want to be able to help someone. So that struck me. Is there anything else you might add or you can think to add?
I can think about something.
I'm so sorry?
I can think about something for the hero.
Yeah,
You had kids.
I do.
You had small children at some point.
Yeah, they were.
Imagine 2 years old, and you ask them to help in the kitchen. Remember how proud they were?
Mhm.
Did it help?
No, but they were proud.
They were proud. Yeah, that's the hero.
No, I think that's a very, very good and eloquent way of speaking to that. That's good. Donna-Lea, you were talking about how to move, just as actually as Marielle did, to a more helpful or constructive, positive role. Can you speak a bit more to that? Because I can listen to you both all night. So I was just very taken with what you're saying. And is there something you can add to that? Because I was so taken by what you were both saying.
Yes, I think that when we put ourselves in a box and we think of ourselves, whether it's the hero, the villain, or whatever that might be, we come into this little box and it really keeps us in one place. There's no possibility for growth. When you're saying it's not my problem, or you're riding in and you're doing 100 things that you shouldn't be doing, that leads to burnout, right? So instead of compartmentalizing it, I can't stress enough about thinking, instead of that reaction, it's all their fault. They didn't do this, they didn't do that. Think about the why. Instead of making judgments, like we talked about someone in a boardroom in a meeting, and they say something that's completely outside of the box. You have no idea where any of this came from. And I think you have to become self-aware, number one, as I mentioned, that this is your thought. That's not necessarily what is going on. So you have to start from there, rather than judging that, is to take a step back and go, stop the immediate reaction and look at the bigger picture. Okay, this is not that person. What is going on with them? What has happened? And what is it that I don't know? And what is going on in my department to create such a reaction that is just so foreign to anything that I know about? So there's got to be issues, and then it gets back to, do the employees feel safe to come and discuss it? Are they discussing between themselves and not at a department level? Is there going this back and forth with problems that we have no ideas about? So the more self-aware, the better for leaders, because you really need to understand that. And if that's the case, then perhaps the employees don't feel empowered. Perhaps they don't communicate because nobody's listening. Perhaps they've tried for so long to make change in the department and nothing is going on. So I think that is the gist of everything, is that no matter how we perceive a situation, chances are we know about 5% of what's really going on. And that's where communication and collaboration and open discussion and free air, free space after meetings, where people can say, here's the stuff that I'm afraid of. We're not going to meet those targets. We don't have the equipment for this. We don't have this, whatever it is. Departments aren't communicating, so we're not getting information. Like it becomes a bigger piece. It's not just a slice of a pie, it's the whole bakery sort of thing. You know what I mean? There's something that's so much bigger, but you have to become more self-aware of yourself as a leader before you can just go in and say, I'm going to fix this, and I'm going to, suspend that person, or I'm going to take them off the project, or I'm going to give them a good talking to, because chances are there's just so much more going on that you don't know.
My hearing can sometimes play tricks on me. So when I think I hear something, I may be wrong. So please feel free to tell me if I have. I heard that a link at one point between self-awareness and psychological safety. Is that just a fantasy in my brain, or did I
No,
hear
it's
it?
true.
Can you speak a bit more about that? Because I was sitting in a while ago on a training session, and it was about psychological safety and self-awareness. And some people were getting very uncomfortable with the notion of self-awareness. And I was just wondering if you could share a bit more about that.
Mhm. Yeah, I can. I've been in several dysfunctional workplaces. And in one, I'll give you an example. I was speaking to a coworker that happened to be working for a different department. And we were getting to the end of our yearly cycle, and we were doing well, but I was exhausted. Like this other person, it was a very similar job. He was exhausted. And I said to him, yes, things are going really, really well. You know, we are going to meet our numbers, but I'm tired, and you're always worried about what might not happen, right? If some people change their mind, or, you know, whatever the issue was at the time. I had my boss come in and pulled me into her office and said, what were you talking about? And reamed me out because I had said, even though I'd said, yes, you know, we're going to meet our numbers. This is really good. We've had a really good year. We're really very pleased with the success that we've had. The fact that I said, I'm a little tired, you know, because like I said, we're all a little tired. I mean, it's been a really long year with long hours, and, you know, we want to make sure everything is good, you know, sort of that, but right. Because you never know. And I was completely reamed out because I had said that. So what that means is that that workplace was not a warm, welcoming environment. Right. So no matter how good how well I was speaking about the progress that I had made, and, you know, we were congratulating each other and really excited for each other because we had succeeded in what we needed to do for the year, because of the wording that I used, which for anybody else, nobody would think about it. But the perception in this person's mind, and what the issue was, is that they wanted to control the narrative. So any sign of doubt or any sign of, you know, which really wasn't there, but it was in their brain.
So it's perceived weakness. Yeah, thank you for that.
Yeah.
Marielle, we don't have much time left, but can you share with us a message that would encompass, you know, the kind of the diamond that would encompass for all of those who are our guests tonight, who are leaders? Some of them are aspiring leaders and some of them are established leaders, that you would like them to leave tonight with? What might be that you'd like to share with them?
I would like to invite them to slow down, just to give themselves the time to be aware so that they can choose a response rather than react without noticing. So maybe that's all.
Well, that's a lot. No, I mean, if you stop and listen to what you just said, it is a lot. There's a lot of wisdom in those few words. And I thank you for them. We are now at the top of the hour. I would like to thank first and foremost Marielle and Donna-Lea for giving us, I think, for me at least, and I'm sure for all of our guests who are listening today and in future days, the fruit of your experiences and your distilled knowledge and wisdom. Thank you very, very much for this. Very, very much appreciated. And I would like also to thank our guests for joining us tonight. And for Jude, or to Jude, I'd like to thank you for organizing this. So I'd like to wish you all a good night, and we'll see you at our next seminar in a month's time.